Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Brew Castle Sports Podcast. Today, we are going to do our regular football episode. Last week we focused on the fantasy, and this week we're going to start doing our new regular football episode. We intended to do it last week, however, as you hear my dogs barking in the background. However, I lost power, and with power, I lost internet for a few days after we regained power, so we didn't have any ability to do any recording. So that's why we were not here.
Up here.
Yeah, lots of big storms up in Michigan. That's why we were not here. But we're back, and we're going to be doing this on Thursdays from here on out, pending more craziness. But today, again, I'm joined by Lami, who is an avid sports fan, and I am joined by Joe Flaherty, who is a sports editor for USA Today affiliates. And we are here to talk to you about the Lions, and we're going to give you some insight into how we feel about the playoffs, even though it's way too early to even talk about that, and it's going to be a great time. So welcome, you guys. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be
having
here.
us.
Nice, solid. All right, so first things first, let's talk Lions, guys. I'm ready to talk about the Lions preseason.
Are you?
Yes.
I'm not excited for the season overall.
I'm excited for this season, not because we're gonna win a bunch, just because I'm excited for the season. But we'll start. We'll go with Joe first. Give us a couple thoughts, and then we'll play around with that.
I think the first team offense basically did what we thought they would. Jared Goff kind of underperformed with the first team though, but honestly, can you really blame that on him? TJ Hawkinson didn't play. DeAndre Swift didn't play. There were a couple other players that didn't play. The one thing that really stood out to me, though, was that the offensive line really didn't do and dominate like we thought they would. Not to say that they should be dominating the first preseason game, but it wasn't as good as we expected from on paper.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I'll start with a couple things that I really liked. I liked what I saw from Amon-Ra St. Brown. I liked the connection he had with Goff. There was one play that was called back by a very rare Frank Ragnow hold that looked really good. His breaks are nice. His route running is solid. That guy looks like he's going to be a great asset for our team in year one, which is super cool. But the line did worry me a little bit. You got Penei Sewell, who got beat by a fellow first-round pick, Gregory Rousseau, on the first play. I do think Sewell, calmed down after that and started to make progress. And, as far as pass rushers go, Gregory Rousseau's talent was never in question. His size was never in question. It was just whether or not he was too raw to play right away. So getting beat by a guy like that, I don't feel like is the worst thing in the world on your first series of your first preseason game after not playing for a year, because he opted out due to COVID. But I definitely was a little worried about that offensive line because I thought Jamal Williams would do better behind them, and it just didn't look very good. So that is definitely a concern for me. But Amon-Ra was a big positive for me for the day. I have more positives, but I want to hear how you feel a little bit, Lami.
Yeah, so my biggest concern with the Lions is, and probably always will be until he shows us that he's not going to be a concern, is Jared Goff. when we went to training camp, he didn't look great out there. There's a lot of, obviously it's training camp, right? So, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But, there are a lot of deep balls that he just wasn't connecting on, right? And that's always been a perceived weakness in his game is his ability to throw the ball deep. And then with his subpar play in the first preseason game, obviously it's preseason. You don't have all your starters playing for most of it. They're not playing their starters at the same time usually. So it's just he continues to be my biggest concern. I did like what I saw from Amon St. Ra. Fantasy is a different question, but as far as what he's going to do for the Lions and his potential to be possibly a wide receiver one, I think there's a chance. I still have to see more before that. I think right now he's at least a solid slot receiver, but we'll see where he goes from here.
He's going to be Jared Goff's Cooper Kupp. That's what I think he's going to end up being.
That's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very reasonable comparison because they're not the biggest guys, but their route running's crisp. They don't have the best speed in the world, but they can. Well, actually, Cooper Kupp's really fast. I forget how fast Cooper Kupp is, and then I watch some of this footage, and he is fast. But something else that I wanted to talk about Goff specifically is the two throws or no, there was one on the sideline to Tyrell Williams that was an absolute dot. It was a very, very nice throw that I thought was really nice. But I will say that with Goff, I actually hope that they don't throw down the field a ton. Like, I don't want Goff to come in here and be this guy that throws a bunch of deep throws. I don't really want that for our team. I want a game manager. I want Goff to be the game manager, because like if he's throwing short to mid, kind of like a Drew Brees situation in the last 5 years or whatever, Drew Brees didn't really push the ball down the field too much unless it was like absolutely open. That's kind of the offense I think we're going towards. A lot of short and medium passes, a strong running game. That's the offense that I envision for Goff and the Lions, not necessarily one that's going to push the ball downfield. Which, you know, there are weaknesses to that, but, you know, I just don't see Goff as the guy that can throw it downfield like that. I just don't see it.
I just don't think Goff has the same ability and skills as Drew Brees, even later in his career. I don't think Jared Goff has the ability to read a defense like Drew Brees does, so he doesn't have that X factor that Drew Brees still had in his game. You know, Drew Brees wasn't a mobile quarterback. He didn't throw the ball down the field very much, but you can always count on him for his X factor of being a scientist when he was on the field. You know, the ability to dissect the defense.
He was a great football mind. And from what we saw from Jared Goff, like with all the play actions and stuff they tried to run down in LA, like I just don't know if he can be that game manager. He's shown flashes of it in his first couple seasons, like after the first season, once they got rid of that coach. You know, in his second season, and third season, he showed flashes of it. But like since then, it's been kind of downhill for him. And I don't know like what the exact cause is. I think there's still a chance he turns out to be, you know, at least an above average quarterback. But from what I've seen so far, I'm still hesitant to say that he can even be a game manager for us.
Yeah, so I only brought up Drew Brees because it's a similar type of offense. I don't think Jared Goff is half the player that Drew Brees was, obviously.
Okay.
You know, Drew Brees is a special talent. But what I'm saying is that, like, that type of offense that Drew Brees ran, I think Goff could do that. He wouldn't be as good, but I don't think we really need him to be as good, which is kind of segues into something else I want to talk about the Lions. I want to talk about the defense. Because there was a lot of stuff that happened on defense that wasn't so great, but there was also a strong presence that felt different, and some players that made some really strong plays that I'm really excited to talk about. One thing that we should probably get out of the way immediately: Tavai broken coverage on Singletary that freed up the touchdown. It was Tavai. They didn't say the player it was because they're not going to throw him under the bus, but it's like it was a cornerback or it was Tavai, and a cornerback covered a different player, and then two guys covered the fullback. So you know, it leads me to believe that it was very likely Tavai because he's the one that had so many broken coverages. And at the end of the day, you know, that's one mistake, but this is a guy that's like super on the fringe for me, like about making the team. Like if he were cut today as the final roster cut, I wouldn't even be shocked based on how Derek Barnes played. He played really well. He showed his great sideline to sideline speed on one play to stop a guy catching a pass out of the flats. Guys like Kevin Strong made a big impact. He had a tackle for loss early in the game. Julian Okwara played 76 snaps, I think. So the idea of him not being able to play with his injuries is something that kind of feels like isn't a problem. And he played really well, too, in the time that he played. What do you guys think about the defense?
For me personally, I would like to talk about Julian Okwara a little bit. I am a Notre Dame Golden Domer, so I've had the ability to watch Julian Okwara for the past several years. And, you know, like a lot of people were talking about on draft night, he probably could have been a first-round talent if it wasn't for his injury, which is why people thought he was the steal of the draft for us. And he wasn't able to play last year, and the first preseason game, we saw him come out, basically perform on defense for at least a few full series, and he wasn't too good as far as his PFF grade at the end of the night goes, but he had, I believe, like 8 pressures on the night and a sack.
Yeah, he had a sack.
I think his ability to hit the edge with his speed is something that our defense doesn't have at that position right now on the edge.
And I think we haven't had in a long time.
No. And you could argue we may have never had a player like him before in at least the past decade. Some could make the argument for Ezekiel Ansah, but he had his other problems. So
Yeah.
But
If you're a Lions fan and you're not excited about the possibilities of the Aquara brothers, you should watch some of their get it out, Joe. Get it out, Joe. Watch the tape.
yeah, check the tape.
Aquara brothers are going to be a force for the next 3 years, and I'm very excited. Another defender that actually had a pretty decent game, which you wouldn't have expected because he's been so messed up with injury, is Austin Bryant. He didn't have like a flashy game or anything like that, but like overall he had a decent game. And it's not something that's going to like make him make the team. I think he's on the fringe as well. I think he's a very likely week 2 cut. But he took a step forward. And that was nice to see because he's a guy that has like a bunch of talent, but injuries have just kept him off the field for his entire career. Another injury that happened that, I was sad to hear, but it doesn't seem serious. They said they were just being safe with him, but Deshaun Hand, he was so jacked up and so ready to like play. And then he's like, I'm glad I'm finally healthy. I'm finally ready to just do things. And then immediately got hurt. And that's so disappointing to see. But I think if Hand is healthy and he can play in the next couple preseason games, he might make a case to make the team. But Kevin Strong, like I said, had a really nice game, so it might be harder for him to make the team than not. But it's sad because he's such a talented player, but injuries have destroyed him.
I think one of the weaknesses we saw with the defense on Friday night was the defensive line and the front seven in general's ability to stop the run. The run defense, was not what you would think it would be with the type of players we have on that front seven this year.
We gave up average for Lions.
Yeah, we gave up some pretty good yards to Devin Singletary, and we don't need to go into how inefficient Devin Singletary is as a running back.
What's interesting about that is, yes, Devin Singletary did not have a great year last year, but did Zach Moss really have a very good year either? Or
he did not.
Did their entire running game just not be so great? Is Devin Singletary maybe a guy that's going to, make some flashes this year? I don't know. We'll talk about that in the fantasy segment later.
Or is it that they were just playing the Detroit Lions?
Well, but you think about it, and the only touchdown happened on a completely broken coverage. And other than that one mistake, which we know who did that, our defense kind of locked it up. And now obviously Josh Allen wasn't in the game, so that's a big deal. But Mitch Trubisky torched us last year. Absolutely torched us with the Bears. And I would argue that even the Bills backups have a little bit more potential talent than some of the Bears, specifically for offensive line. The Bills backups are probably comparable to the Bears starters last year on a whole when it comes to offensive line. And Trubisky didn't do anything. And I expected Trubisky to at least do something. Not to say that Trubisky's a great player or anything. I'm going to get roasted by people who think he's the best player ever. That's a thing. The
is
MVP.
It really? Because he averaged a 93 QBR last year. I don't think he's anything close to special.
It's a giant meme.
Okay.
No, but he did you can't get around the fact that he absolutely torched us last year, several times. So the fact that he wasn't able to really put anything together, we held them to a field goal on the first drive. We had that 18 play, 10-minute drive immediately after. And then the defense didn't really let anything go for the rest of the game except the little bit the one broken coverage. So I don't know. The Bills, I think, is a pretty deep, the Bills are a deep team. And I don't particularly think I expected us to actually hold them to the 16 points. I really expected the first and second team offenses to destroy our defense based on how poorly our defense played last year. So I kind of take it as kind of a bonus that we weren't absolutely destroyed. Our secondary held up pretty decently, which I didn't expect because, our secondary is easily the most suspect part of the entire team.
Yeah, I think the pass defense did pretty well. It's again, the Lions have struggled against better running backs in the past seasons, and this is a totally new team, and it's the first preseason game. You're not expecting everything to be perfect, especially when we're talking about Penei Sewell. The kid's only 20 years old. And 2 years from now, 2 years from now, you're going to have the Rams drafting an offensive tackle. Or no, they won't because they won't have a first round pick.
Yeah,
but
it'll be 3 years from now unless they trade for somebody else.
You'll see the Rams, the Cincinnati Bengals, take a first-round offensive tackle that's going to be older than Penei Sewell in 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, if they learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, I just got one more. It's just a quick note on some of the backup right guards. Tommy Kramer and Logan Semberg, I think both, they didn't perform like great, but I think it showed that if Vaitai, who struggled with some injuries last year, if he was to go down at right guard, I think we could be in a situation where our backups could step in and perform right away.
Yeah. So we have had a few cuts from the Lions, and it was an unfortunate situation that happened over the weekend. Or over the week, I don't exactly remember what day, but we waived Alex Brown and Charlie T, who were both involved in a car accident. Not Charlie. Alex Brown was under the influence, and he was driving, and he hit somebody. It would probably be remiss if we didn't mention it. It's a sad situation, and you just hope that everybody's okay, and that Alex Brown gets some help if he needs it.
Yep. For sure.
And yeah, we also waived Michael Warren. He wasn't involved in that. And then Evan Bomer also went on to injured reserve. So let's go ahead and start with our bad team who's going to excel, because I think that's fun. And then we'll talk about the great team who's going to fail after that. So we'll go in the typical order. We'll start with Joe, then we'll go with Lami, and then we'll go to me.
You can go ahead and start with Lami.
Okay, Lami, great team who's going to fail.
Great team is going to fail. I'm going to talk about the Saints. The way I looked at when we were talking about doing this segment, I looked at the current NFL power rankings, and I picked a team in the top half that I think is going to finish in the bottom half, and then vice versa. So the Saints, the last I looked, was ranked 13. And I think of all the teams that are in the top half of the league right now, according to the NFL power rankings, they have the clearest path to a bottom half finish. We have all these issues with Michael Thomas and his late surgery, the rumors about him ghosting the team and angering Sean Payton. There's still infinite questions at QB. We have no idea who's going to start. Neither of them look particularly great. Taysom Hill actually looked fairly bad in this first preseason game. And then they have other players out. Marshawn Lattimore's in doubt from off the field issues. David Onyemata is suspended for performance enhancing drugs. Even Will Lutz is going to miss extended time due for surgery. So, there's just so many things going wrong with this team right now that I would if they finish, bottom third of the league, I would not be totally surprised. Do I expect that? Maybe not, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Taysom Hill did not look good. Jameis Winston looked better than Taysom Hill, but that's not saying much.
No.
And he played longer, I believe, or at least he passed the ball more. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it did not look good for the quarterbacks of the Saints. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, my team that's going to do bad is the same as Lami's, the New Orleans Saints. Losing Drew Brees last year, there was a big question of whether or not, Jameis Winston was going to be the protege to Drew Brees. We heard him talking to him, after games saying, this is your team, this is your team. And then now, week one into the preseason, Taysom Hill is still getting a lot of snaps. And I think that hurts your offensive outlook for the team this year. And I think it also says a lot about what they're expecting out of Jameis Winston this year. I think if Jameis Winston is not the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in 2021, I think you can expect this offense to be in the bottom half of the league. And the defense lost a lot of players, and the offense has a lot of injuries. Michael Thomas, like Lami said, is ghosting the team, or he's waiting until they trade him. Who knows how that situation plays out? Either way, not having Michael Thomas on the field hurts Alvin Kamara. It hurts whoever the quarterback is. And it also is going to mean that they're probably going to be down a lot in games. And I don't see Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston being a quarterback that can take them out of a deep loss like that, or being down a lot of points. I think, a Matthew Stafford type player could be able to do that for your team. Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are not, either of them are even close to being like Matthew Stafford. So, and I think with the amount of workload that Alvin Kamara is going to get, it's possible that he could get injured this year. And if Alvin Kamara goes down, you can just sail the ship. They're going to be a top 5 pick next year.
Whole season's tanked. Yeah, I will add on to that real quick about the quarterbacks. I don't think Jameis is going to be their guy. I think they're going to have to go out. They're going to have a bad season here somewhere and pick up a QB, or trade for one. But I think that he is the most likely to be able to pull them out if they're ever in like a bad deficit or whatever. And I could see times where, you know, they're playing both quarterbacks, you know, where they like, you know, the starter is going to be Jameis Winston, and then like on certain plays where they need to like, you know, have quarterback options or, you know, what have you, trying to have a little trickery, you know, they'll bring in Taysom Hill.
I agree with you guys. I think Jameis needs to be the starter, because if you start Taysom Hill, you lose most of the stuff that's really good about Taysom Hill. Like, you lose all of the trick play aspects, because like he's going to be the starter on the field every play. So you no longer have that option to like put him in there and all of a sudden you do a QB draw that people aren't expecting because they're planning for Jameis Winston. Like, you lose half of your playbook, I think, as the Saints, when you start Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston, because Winston's never going to come in randomly and do something for you. He's not going to be a tight end randomly in a formation. So I think that Taysom Hill should not be the starter, but I understand like Sean Payton wanting to make him the starter because he paid him some significant money to stay there. But for me, the team, and I honestly thought that mine was a little bit of a cop out, because this feels really obvious. But it's also not that obvious because this team has not gone under 500 for several years. I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they have the potential to even finish last in their division. Depending on what happens with Ben. I will say that Dwayne Haskins had a great preseason game. So if Ben were to go down or something similar to that, you know, Haskins maybe has found a spot where he's more comfortable than he was with Washington. But I think the Steelers are going to finish under 500 for the first time in a decade or 15 years, whatever. I don't think Tomlin's ever gone less than 500 as the head coach there, but I could be wrong about that. But I think it's been a long time. But I think they're going to be the team that was great last year, at least for the first 11 weeks. And then even in the playoff game that they lost to the Browns, like they were bad for they made like 2 or 3 turnovers really early, and then they played all right for the rest of the game. They just couldn't make up the huge deficit that they had put themselves into. But I definitely think the Steelers are my pick for the great team from last year that's going to absolutely do not so great this year. Their division also is so tough. Like, the Ravens and the Browns are both really, really good. The Bengals beat them last year, and I don't think the Bengals are going to be worse this year. I think they're going to be better. I still think the Steelers probably beat them, but I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to take down the Ravens and the Browns next year. Both of those rosters are just too talented, man.
Yeah, okay. So like I said earlier, I went through the rankings and picked a team that was in the bottom that I think is the most likely to finish at the top half. And for me, it's the Cowboys. You know, their power ranking has them at 20 right now. That's, you know, almost bottom third. But last year, you know, they were riddled with injuries. You know, Dak got injured. You know, I think there were a couple games that Amari missed. You know, they didn't have great quarterback play. Elliott severely dropped off after Dak Prescott was gone. But if you look at those first, I think it was 5 games before he got injured. If you look at those first 5 games, Dak Prescott was on a record-setting pace. He was on pace for 7,000 yards that season. That's insane. Like, a good year for a quarterback is hitting 5,000 yards, and he was on pace to go 2,000 yards past that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think with him back, the line, I think, is going to be stronger this year than it was last year. You know? And then Amari Cooper and DeMarcus Lawrence just got pulled off the PUP list as well. So I think with them trending upwards, I think this team really has a chance to outperform last year.
Yeah, one name that I think is a huge difference for the Cowboys this year, Micah Parsons. I think that dude is a defense-changing type of player. And if you look at the first 5 games before Dak got hurt last year, like, Dak played great, but honestly, the reason why he had to do all of the things that he did is because of how incredibly horrendous that defense was. So I think that's also a great opportunity for the Cowboys to get better, is now they have this kid that, you know, looked great in the preseason game and has the potential to be the new leader of the Dallas Cowboys defense. So I love that pick. What about you, Joe?
Well, unfortunately, the Cowboys' defense is still garbage, regardless if Parsons is there. So I don't think their defense is going to be as good as people think they're going to be, and I think Dallas is going to have to use Dak Prescott in their offense to outscore their opponents in every game. I think you're going to see a similar season with them this year, where they're going to have to throw and get 30 points, 30 plus points a game to win. But it worked. It worked for a while
Yeah.
until Dak Prescott get injured.
Yeah.
So
Real quick, breaking news that I just got from Ian Rappaport. The Seahawks have finally agreed to terms on a large extension for Jamal Adams, a 4-year, $70 million deal that makes him the league's highest paid safety. He gets $38 million guaranteed, breaking the stalemate. A long time coming and well deserved. That was Ian Rappaport's tweet. That honestly, it should have happened sooner. But happy for Jamal Adams. I don't believe Jamal Adams is the best safety in the league, but at this stage of contracts, it doesn't really matter if they're the best safety. You have to pay them.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely one that deserves to be paid. Whether or not he's the number one safety in the league, he is an elite safety. And you have to pay him like one. That's the thing.
Now the Bengals just need to pay Jesse Bates before they lose him because that guy's insane, and they're just like, oh, we don't really want to pay him. Bengals not drafting Sewell, not paying Jesse Bates. What are they doing?
Not learning from their mistakes.
All right, so Joe, who's your team that was bad last year but you think is going to be great this year?
Well, I think it's very easy from an objective standpoint to look at this team and be like, they were bad last year, but a lot of those things weren't their fault, and that team is the San Francisco 49ers. They finished 6-10 last year, and they basically lost most of their key players throughout the entire season. When you go from starting Jimmy Garoppolo to CJ Beathard, quarter way through the season, and Jimmy Garoppolo is out for the rest of the year, and then that defense was riddled with injuries, including Nick Bosa, who was their Pro Bowl perennial defensive end talent, and you also had George Kittle out for most of the season as well. That team, with all those injuries, still finished 6-10. Mm-hmm. They were bad, but some of these games that they lost last year, it's just, you're looking at that and you're like, that team had these playmakers back, they're winning most of those games and they're in the playoffs again. I mean, they just went to a Super Bowl not that long ago with that team that's still there mostly, and they only have gotten better on defense. They've only gotten better on offense, and they are probably going to have an upgrade at quarterback with, Trey Lance coming in. He's going to be a mobile quarterback. He's going to add that extra step to his game. He's probably going to rush for 500 yards and throw for 500 yards, through the first 3 games. And he's probably going to score a lot of touchdowns. The main problem that I see with the 49ers this year is that they play in a tough division. And I think that division is going to be a wrecking ball. I think you could easily see each team splitting a division series between all 4 teams. But whoever comes out of that alive and wins that division is probably going to make it to the NFC divisional playoffs and maybe even the NFC championship game. And I think the 49ers can do it.
Yeah, I think the 49ers is a great choice. I didn't go with them just because I felt like if I went with the Steelers and then the 49ers, my picks would have both been way too safe. And I wanted to have a little bit more of a splash with my pick. But
all I'll say about the... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
All I'll say, to add on to that point, Steelers, man, it's time to get a new quarterback. It's time. I don't think Dwayne Haskins is that. No, let's listen. I think Dwayne Haskins can be a solid backup quarterback, but if he's forced into a starting situation this year, I think you can see the Steelers do even worse than the Bengals. So
I agree with that. But I think even with Big Ben, they might do worse. It depends on which Big Ben we get. So for my team that I think did poorly last year, that's going to do great this year, I am locking in the Carolina Panthers. And the reason there's some reasons for this. Obviously, when you lose a player like Christian McCaffrey, you people forget about you. People forget about your team. Christian McCaffrey is a generational talent. He's such a great player, and I think with him coming back, I think he's going to invigorate that offense. I think Darnold never really got a fair shake in the NFL because he had to deal with Adam Gase and the Jets, and they're a dumpster fire. I think that Darnold is going to surprise some people. I don't think he's going to be like a top 10 quarterback in the league, but I think he's going to be a very solid average to above average quarterback, and he's going to spend a lot of time dumping it off to Christian McCaffrey. Also, Terrence Marshall, look out for him. That dude had a great preseason game. He had at least one great play where he had like a 60-yard pass where he ran down the sideline. I am very excited about Terrence Marshall as a prospect across the board. I think their defense is going to develop a little bit. They also they have a good situation where they have PJ Walker as a backup quarterback, where he in the little bit of time that he played last year, he wasn't terrible.
Check the tape.
But I do think that Darnold will end up playing better than people expect. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to come back and light up the NFL again. And the trio of DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Terrence Marshall is going to be too much for people to handle. Carolina Panthers are going to finish like 10-7 or 11-6 and surprise people and make a wild card.
I agree with that because I think if you look at what Joe Brady is one of the best offense coordinators in the NFL right now, who didn't get an opportunity to have a healthy team for his first year last year. I even thought he was originally my pick for being the Lions' new head coach. I think Joe Brady is a magician as an offensive coordinator. It's only going to be about time that he's going to get an NFL head coaching opportunity, probably in like at least the next couple years. He's got Terrace Marshall, who he was able to coordinate in that miraculous season with LSU before that team fell apart with scandals over the past year. But I think Joe Brady with Christian McCaffrey and a better quarterback there, I think you can see that offense fly. And let's be honest, besides the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is there anybody else in the NFC South that scares you? Like, there's no way I can see the Carolina Panthers not beating the Falcons and the Saints this year.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, so we're going to move on to our division winners, or our way too early playoff prediction. We're going to talk about the division winners, and then we're going to talk about the AFC and NFC championship winners, and then we're going to end out the show telling you each of us are going to give you two hot takes for the regular NFL season. So to start off, let's start with this seems natural. Let's start off with the NFC North. Who do you guys think is going to win that division, and why is it going to be the Green Bay Packers?
I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. Aaron Rodgers is ready to come back to work. Devontae Adams is here. He still has all the same pieces from last year. They went 13-3. I don't see, even with Justin Fields, the Bears aren't quite where they need to be yet to really push the Packers out of number one contention. Lions certainly aren't there. And the Vikings probably give them the most competition, but I think the talent level on Green Bay is just above what Minnesota has, and I don't think that realistically any of the other NFC North teams can push them out of the number one spot, barring like catastrophic injuries to their roster.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I also have the Green Bay Packers winning the NFC North, and here's the simple fact. They're only like 3 mistakes away from making the Super Bowl last year. And they only got better as a team. And the only big question mark was if Aaron Rodgers was going to be back this year. And it seems like they've fixed things for this year. So there's no reason to suggest that they're not going to be the number one team in this division. And the only trouble I can see them getting into is Chicago Bears early on in the season with an early flashes from Justin Fields because he's going to be starting by week 4. Mm-hmm. So, but that offense is dangerous, but I think Green Bay is even more dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not convinced necessarily yet that Justin Fields is going to start as early as week 4. I think that Justin Fields looked great against the third team defense of the I forget what team they even played, but he looked great against the third stringers. He didn't look so good against the second and first stringers. I'm not convinced that he's going to start this year, but I do think he should. Just maybe not as early as week 4. But I do think that Andy Dalton's going to win some games and make it hard for Justin Fields to start. I know you both disagree with that. I don't believe in the Red Rocket. I believe in the Bears defense, and I believe Andy Dalton being good enough to not throw away games. He won't be as exciting as Justin Fields. He won't be as dynamic. He's not the type of player that Justin Fields can be. but I think they're going to really ease in Justin Fields and don't want to like start him right away. Because you think about the preseason, what happened with Trubisky his first preseason game? 18 for 25, high completion rate, looked like a star. Chicago fans went nuts, and now we're here.
Justin Fields is better than Mitchell Trubisky.
I agree, but I agree that Justin Fields is much better than Mitchell Trubisky. Like even right now, but it's still a parallel, right? Like
I think simple. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I waited for you, and then we went at the same time. Go ahead.
The simple fact of the matter is that Chicago Bears are only 2 years away from this team falling apart. They don't have the luxury to sit around and wait for Justin Fields to get accumulated to the starting position, and I don't think that Andy Dalton's experience as a starting quarterback is going to trump Justin Fields' talent and ability going into Week 1. And if the Bears are sitting here thinking we're in the playoff hunt now, we need to win games early. We need to win these first few games, especially with the first few games against the division. They're playing the Lions early. I believe that game is going to be at home for them. I think that Andy Dalton is not going to be able to win those games for them. That's just my thoughts. I think Justin Fields comes in, but regardless, it's still Green Bay's division.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's move on to probably a little bit more split of a division, but let's go with the NFC East. Lami, who do you think is going to win the NFC East?
I mean, this just goes right back into the bad team from last year. I think that's going to do well this year. I think it's going to be the Cowboys. They got all their pieces back. I don't think there's another team in the division that can realistically keep up with them, even with as bad as their defense is. Like their offense is too dynamic. It's got too many weapons, and I really don't see any of these other teams even coming close to competing with them this year, as long as Dak stays healthy. Dak is the key piece in all of this.
Yeah. I go ahead, Joe. Who do you think's going to win?
Well, what is it called when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? And that's what's going to happen with the Dallas Cowboys this year, twice, when they go up against the NFC East division winner Washington football team. And I think that defense is going to be the best and most talented and most successful defense in the NFL this year. They're going to cause a lot of turnovers. They're going to get to the quarterback. And while the NFC East Cowboys offensive line is really good at run blocking, I don't think they're going to be able to stop Chase Young and that plethora of talent on that defensive front seven. And I think once Dak and that team versus a great defense like that twice a year, I think they could easily split those games. And I think Washington football team's offense is going to be great this year under Ryan Fitzpatrick. So my choice is NFC East team, Washington football.
Yeah, I like the Washington football team. I do. And I like Ryan Fitzpatrick a lot. And I probably should take the Washington football team. But the team that I have in mind has a good defense.
Oh,
they have a healthy running back now. They're slightly held back by their starting quarterback. But if he figures out the fumble situation, I think the New York Giants will win that division. I think that this division, outside of the Eagles, you can make a case for every one of the other teams because this division was so incredibly bad last year that one of them just needs to take a solid step forward and then they will, there's no clear winner here. This is the most contested division in football. You could even probably make an argument for the Eagles, even though I think that the Eagles are a dumpster fire, but Jalen Hurts is really good. So as long as they actually name Jalen Hurts their starter at some point, I think the Eagles could be in the conversation too. But I'm going to go with the New York Giants. I do think that they have struggles with their offensive line, and Daniel Jones needs to work on his fumbling issues. But I do think that they will win the division this year. But realistically, they're all going to go 9-8, and it's going to be a tiebreaker in week 17 or 18 or whatever it is.
I think if you're predicting the New York Giants to win the NFC East, you're automatically making Saquon Barkley the number one running back in fantasy this year. Because that dude is going to have to carry that team. That offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. It's probably worse than the Cincinnati Bengals. There's not one player on that offensive line that makes me think that they're going to be able to keep Daniel Jones upright for the entire season. I think
Daniel Jones isn't a special talent either.
So, but if they can get rolling on offense with Daniel Jones, I mean, you saw that dude, he almost had a 90-yard touchdown last year before he tripped over himself.
All right. So let's go to the NFC South. Let's switch it up a little bit. Let's have Joe start this time.
Well, all right, so we don't need to talk any further about it. We can
No.
just move along. This is Tampa Bay. They're
Yeah.
returning every single starter from their Super Bowl winning team last year. They're going to probably be the team to beat in the NFC this year. Tampa Bay is only going to get better. You know, Tom Brady with another year, a healthy Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on that team. There's no way. And you know what? The sleeper pick, Giovanni Bernard at running back, he's finally got his passing back that he so much loves to have on his team. That offense is better. That defense got better. There's no way that they're not winning the NFC South.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Like, I have the Bucks winning the South pretty handily. Like, I don't think there's another team. Like, they won the Super Bowl last year, and they beat the Chiefs to do it. You know, like I don't.
Yeah.
You know, they have all their starters coming back. Like, there's not really anything negative I can see coming out of this team that would make me think that one of these other teams can pass them.
Yeah, and I think the Saints have no chance of beating them this year. I think the Falcons have no chance of beating them. I think the Panthers could take a regular season game from them, and maybe it's their home game, but that's a stretch. I think that Tampa Bay, Brady Bay, whatever you want to call them, I think they have the potential to be the number one team in the NFC. So yeah, that's a pretty easy one. So now we move on to the NFC West, which is a very difficult decision. So I'm going to say, since we didn't really switch it up because we all agreed very quickly, Joe, go ahead and let us know. Who do you think is going to win the NFC West?
Well, it's definitely not going to be the San Francisco 49ers, which I said was the team that I thought was going to be great this year. I still think the Los Angeles Rams are the most talented offensively and the most NFL defensive ready for this season out of the teams in the NFC West. I think Russell Wilson could end up cooking up a Michelin star season over there in Seattle, but I don't think their offense is as dangerous as the LA Rams with Matthew Stafford. And yes, I understand that Cam Akers was a big part of that offense, and he's unfortunately out for the rest of the year with his Achilles injury, and it's unfortunate that he's out for the rest of the year, and that can affect his entire career. I hope he gets better. I think Darrell Henderson can come in and easily produce in that offense. And if he comes in and is able to give Matthew Stafford a decent running game, I think that offense is going to fly, and no one's going to be able to stop him.
So I actually went with the Seahawks here. Some of your arguments is making me kind of second guess it a little bit, but I just have too much faith in Russell Wilson. He's shown that he's an elite level quarterback. He's been doing this for years. You know, he's got a great head coach. You know, DK Metcalf is coming into his own. They still have Chris Carson. You know, they have all these pieces. I think it's probably definitely between Seahawks and Rams, and it's going to be close. But really, for me, it's going to depend on Matthew Stafford. How good is his play? How good does he acclimate to Sean McVay's offense and the new playbook? It really just comes down to how well Stafford plays. It's going to be a battle of the quarterbacks, I think, especially in the head-to-head games that they have this year. So I'm really excited actually to see those games more than any other game this season, I think.
Yeah. So for me, you guys know how much I love Matthew Stafford. I really like the Rams defense. I'm not sold on their running game yet. I think Darrell Henderson will be just fine, but I think they need a second back there to really share the carries with Henderson to get, like, A, to keep Henderson healthy, and B, to, just have a change of pace back. And I wasn't impressed with Xavier Jones in the preseason game. Jake Funk was not impressive. Like, I don't know who's going to be the second back in that offense to help take some pressure off of Stafford. And, the offensive line is solid, but I don't know if it's good enough to lead them to a division win. And it pains me not to take the Rams here because, I want Stafford to win a Super Bowl. I do think they'll make the wild card, but I'm going to go with probably an out there take. I think the Seahawks are going to be last in that division. Not to say they're not going to have a good record. That division's all going to be like that entire division could make the playoffs. I think the Arizona Cardinals will win that division with Kyler Murray, AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and now Rondale Moore. They have 4 wide receivers that are going to be able to beat people. I know AJ Green looked bad in Cincinnati in his final years, But what the hell was he playing for? He knew they weren't winning. He didn't want to be there anymore. He's going to be reinvigorated. DeAndre Hopkins is hyping up A.J. Green, saying that he's the best veteran he's played with, which is shocking to me because, Larry Fitz was a baller up until he finished last year. But I do think that Kyler Murray takes a huge step forward. I think that defense takes a step forward because that defense has some really talented players, and I think that they end up being a more complete football team than anybody else in the NFC West. And I think the Cardinals win that division. I don't think you can really go wrong with any of these teams, though. Like, we'll look back at this at the end of the season and be like, okay, well, all of them were competitive at some point. One of them likely is going to end up not being as good as we think they are. At the end of the day, you hope it's the Lions for us because then we get a better, or you hope it's the Rams for us because then the Lions get a better draft pick. But also, most Lions fans want to see Stafford win. But that, I think that division is a coin flip. And it's going to be very exciting to see the games, like you said. So let's move on to the AFC. Let's start with the AFC North. We'll do the same order. We'll go north, east, southwest.
I'll start out.
Sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
And I'm gonna kind of just run through these all real quick, and then we can kind of discuss them if that's okay with you guys. So I'm just gonna run through them. AFC North, I think Cleveland Browns are the best team in the AFC North. I think the Ravens are really talented, but I don't think they have recouped yet with Lamar Jackson and in that offense have figured out. That passing game is still a work in progress. The Cleveland Browns are just ready to win. The AFC South, I think it's going to be the Tennessee Titans. They're the best team right now. They're the most healthy team. They got better on offense. They got Julio Jones. That team's going to win some pretty good games this year. The AFC East, I think it's a repeat with the Buffalo Bills. I think the Patriots are a walking train wreck with Cam Newton as their starting quarterback. I think the AFC West is easily the Kansas City Chiefs again.
Okay.
Finally,
I was about to say, Lami, you run on yours and I'll run on mine.
It's kind of funny, but I have the literal exact same picks as Joe here. I think the Browns clearly have the most talent and the most consistency, which is kind of weird for me to say considering all the Browns have gone through, in their franchise history, especially recently. Being so close to Ohio, being in Michigan, like you hear a lot of, Ohio team news between the Bengals and the Browns. And, it's kind of shocking the way the Browns have, turned it around. I kind of hope that some of that rubs off on the Lions a little bit, and we can start heading in that direction. Titans, they're not going to stop Derrick Henry. I'm sorry. And then there's just more tools for Tannehill over there. Bills, Chiefs, just quarterbacks are too good. Offenses are too good. Like, it's just... I think the AFC is much easier to pick out than the NFC. I think the NFC is a much tighter knit group as in terms of tiers of how good the teams are, and the divisions are much more evenly mixed versus the AFC. I think it's those four teams are fairly clear, going to be the winners at least this early in the season.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think the Browns are just one of the most talented teams in the NFL. If they can't put it together, they really need to take a big, strong look at Baker. I think Baker's good, but if he can't put it together with that roster, I don't know what to tell you, man. The Titans are incredible, and they added Julio. I think Tannehill's going to be the reason that they do well. Henry obviously is a big part, but like you mentioned in our last one, Julian, our last cast, Derrick Henry is poised to take a big regression based on the stats. So I think Tannehill's going to lead that team to that division, not him. I think the Bills. I've been on the Bills train for the last 2 years. I love Josh Allen.
Bills Mafia, let's go.
However, I think, and this is going to be a shocker. It also ties into my hot takes, but we'll talk more about it when we get there. I think the Los Angeles Chargers win the AFC West on the back of Justin Herbert, Derwin James coming back. The offense in general being good. They have a really nice rookie wide receiver that is making some waves in camp. I think a healthy Austin Eckler. Their offensive line is much improved. I think this division is the Chiefs to lose, but if the Chargers can take one or two of the games that they play, I think they have a potential to have a better overall team. I like what the Chiefs did in the offseason. I love their offensive line now. Patrick Mahomes is obviously great. I don't know how well their defense is going to take a step forward. I don't know if it is going to take a step forward. If you asked me to pick right now, I would say the Chargers defense is going to be better than the Patriots, the Chiefs defense. I will, however, say though that I think the Patriots are going to be a much improved team, and I think they might give the Bills a run for their money, because they lost 9 starters on their defense last year to COVID. They opted out, so look for the Patriots to be a way better defense this year. I do think that their offense will not be good until Mac Jones becomes the starter, and I think their defense will take a step forward because Mac Jones is more the player that Bill Belichick really has success with. He doesn't really have he doesn't really have success with Cam Newton. He didn't last year. I know what I just said, and that's hilarious. That was golden. Okay.
Oh man. All right.
But yeah,
we're keeping that in.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Okay, but
Sorry,
I think
Bill.
Yeah, I agree with the AFC though. I think the AFC is way easier to predict, and there's not really a whole lot of point to embellish upon them because unless somebody comes way out of left field, maybe the Colts challenge the Titans, maybe the Patriots or the Dolphins challenge the Bills, but probably not. Chiefs ultimately are probably going to go 17-0, and I'm crazy for even picking the Chargers, but watch out for the Chargers. I think they have potential. And the NFC, the only team that guaranteed has that division locked up is the Packers and Tampa Bay. The Packers and Tampa Bay, but the other two divisions are wide open. So let's move on to our hottest takes ever. The top two, we're each gonna give you 2 hot takes.
Did you want to talk about the AFC NFC Championship picks?
Oh right, no, I'm sorry, I'm totally passing over that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the AFC champions. Who do you guys think that will end up being the AFC champions? We'll start with Joe.
I think the AFC Championship game. Listen. If the Chargers end up winning that division, I think that's an okay take. But I still think the Kansas City Chiefs make the AFC Championship. I think my entire AFC NFC Championship here is just a repeat of last year. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills, and it's going to be Tampa Bay versus Green Bay. And I think the two teams that come out of that are just the opposite of what happened last year. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be a better team this year than the Kansas City Chiefs. Just from a defensive standpoint, I think offensively, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be the most dominant offense this year. And then on the other side, Green Bay was only a couple plays away from making the Super Bowl last year. They're right on par with Tampa Bay with how talented their teams are. I think the one X factor this year is going to be Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers just having more pass plays this year than Tom Brady's going to have. So I think you're going to see Green Bay Packers versus Buffalo Bills for the Super Bowl.
I like that take. What about you, Lami?
So when I did mine, I also did the wild card stuff. So I actually don't think the Chiefs will actually play the Bills in the championship. I think they're actually going to play them in the divisional because the way that the numbers work out, because there's only one bye this year, the Chiefs I have them ranked as the number 1 seed overall, and then the Bills are going to be number 2 seed, which would put the Bills against the worst wildcard team, which I have as the Patriots right now. And then the 1 and 2 teams would then play each other immediately in the first divisional round. So it would be Chiefs Bills there. I have the Chiefs coming out on top. And then on the other side, Browns Titans. I have the Titans going against the Chiefs, and then I think the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. On the other side, it's actually funny. So I said that the Hawks were going to win the division, but I actually have the Rams making it to the championship just based on seeding and who has to play who, because I have them as the first wildcard team behind the Hawks. And then so I have them playing. I think the Packers make it. I think the Packers have the best chance of making it the way the seeding turned out here. It's going to be Packers Chiefs. I'm really torn. I really think that Aaron has a chance to get it done against the Chiefs because the Chiefs defense is not great and Aaron is an amazing quarterback. but I think the Chiefs are going to end up taking it again. It's going to be their third trip to the Super Bowl, like in a row. And last year they didn't look great against the Bucks in the Super Bowl. But I think they get some of that corrected, and I think they have a much better season this year overall, and I think they take it all.
All right. So for me, this is just going to continue the trend of this episode of me having the spicier takes. I think the AFC will be between the Browns and the Bills, and I think the Browns will win. I love the Bills, and I think the Bills are going to get to a Super Bowl in the next 3 years. But I think the Browns put it all together. Baker Mayfield steps forward, has a great year. That defense obliterates people, and I think they make it to the Super Bowl. On the NFC side, I think it will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. I mean, how do you bet against either one of those teams? Unless they have to play each other in an earlier round, they should be everybody's pick for the divisional round, for the NFC divisional round. I could see a couple teams maybe challenging, like maybe Washington football team's defense is so good that they make a case to be able to stop Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, but I don't know that I see that happening. And then for the Super Bowl, I'm going to say that the Browns win, and the entire NFL world is happy because the Browns deserve it. The Browns fans deserve it. As a Lions fan, I have a soft spot for Browns fans.
Well, I think you could say the same thing about the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have been 3 times and lost every single one. Mm-hmm. And I think the Bills are also just as deserving of a Super Bowl championship run.
Yeah, anybody but the Buccaneers or the Chiefs. Like let's have some new blood in there. But I think that all 4 of those teams are great. Like Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Packers, Bills, and Browns are like my top 4 favorite Super Bowl favorites right now. Preseason week 1. With all that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our 2 hot takes for the regular NFL season. I'm going to go ahead and start off this segment because one of my hot takes has already been thrown out there. I think the Kansas City Chiefs do not win their division. I think the Chargers end up taking them down, winning that division for the first time in 6 years that it wouldn't be anybody but the Chiefs.
Well, my first hot take is that I think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to actually finish bottom of the NFC West. I think they're out of all the teams in the NFC West, I think the Arizona Cardinals are the most hot and cold team from last year. Mm-hmm. There are some weeks where Cliff Kingsbury and that offense were flying high. And then there were other weeks where they were losing games to teams like the Detroit Lions and stuff like that. So they obviously didn't play last year, but as I was going through the Detroit Lions games and trying to figure out, what teams they could possibly beat this year that are going to be surprises, and I think the Lions could take down the Arizona Cardinals. And I think if the Cardinals lose a couple of those games that they should win this year, and then lose at least half of the division games this year, I think as much as I love that offense and defense, they're the least talented group out of the 3 NFC West teams, in my opinion. And I could easily see them finishing with a losing record this year.
Spicy. What about you, Lami?
Okay, so I don't know how spicy these actually are. I'll let you guys decide that. I decided to not be as, spicy as my Drew Lock take. I'm going to talk about, I think Mac Jones is going to be the starter by week 6. I think Cam is not the offense that they want to run as efficient as Cam might have been near the goal line towards the end there, or in the beginning before he got COVID. We still don't know how he's recovered, how well he's doing. Mac Jones had flashes of an amazing arm during his first preseason game. He had an absolute dime that got dropped in the end zone from I think it was 55 yards out or something, and it was just on target, and he just dropped it. But yeah, I think Mac Jones is going to end up being the guy at some point, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later.
I think it's totally possible that Cam Newton, by that week 6, is just going to be a goal line situational player.
Yeah, I think he turns into Taysom Hill for that team. You might even see him take some snaps at tight end for some weird formations that Belichick draws up, because I think Cam Newton wants to play, but I don't know if he has the arm talent to really succeed in today's NFL anymore. All right, so with that said, my final hot take is that I think we will see the first 0-17 team this year. and thankfully it won't be the Lions. The Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence will not win a single game this year. Whether it's by design or whether it's because they just can't do it, I do not think they will win a single game. I think Lawrence will play well, but I don't think he'll play well enough for that team to win a single game. And you can put that on the board. I'm probably going to be wrong. But I mean, I wanted to go really hot. And that team did not, like, Trevor Lawrence did not show me anything in the preseason game that got me remotely excited. The fact that he's the first overall pick, he came out, he couldn't even muster a field goal drive when, the quarterbacks that got taken after him looked way better. He did have a couple of nice throws, but, like, in the situation with him versus, like, Trey Lance had nice throws that got dropped. Lawrence just was, like, forgettable. Now, granted, they didn't let him play very long, so maybe I'll be sticking my foot in my mouth when he plays the full half and dominates the next game. But I was not particularly excited, and I think they'll go 0-17. What's your second hot take, Joe?
Well, I would add on to that I think that team's going to be a mess this year. In my opinion, if you're going to choose a team that's going to go 0-17 this year, it's going to be the Houston Texans for reasons we won't dive into too much here in the podcast. I think everyone knows what that situation is like. That team's a hot garbage fire and is just waiting to implode.
But Davis Mills is a go.
I think Tyrod Taylor just keeps going to teams that just keep going endless throughout the year. So, my other hot take for this segment, I think, is not really that much of a hot take anymore, but it's Aaron Rodgers is going to go out a Super Bowl champion. I think he's going to win the Super Bowl this year, and I think this is his time. This is like his one last ride, but I guess to add on to that hot take, I think he's going to pretend like he's going to go out a Super Bowl champion, and then he's going to be traded away to another team next year, and he's going to try and do it again. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to retire after this season, but everyone's going to make this out to be the last ride, and he's going to win a Super Bowl, and he's going to tell everybody, oh, I'm going to the Broncos. So I think that's going to happen.
I think it'll be the Broncos because Drew Lock is going to be a top shelf quarterback this year. So
Could you imagine Aaron Rodgers right now on that Carolina Panthers offense?
Disgusting.
So did I miss Lami's hot take?
No. So mine is actually very similar to yours. It's talking about Urban Meyer. People in Jacksonville are so hyped up about Urban Meyer, him in combination with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to have the worst record he's had in his football career. I don't know if I go as far as to say that he's going to be 0-17. But I think it's definitely going to be the worst he's ever had, and it's definitely going to be on the south side of 500, like pretty drastically.
Yeah, something to mention about the Jaguars, just while we both have had hot takes about the Jaguars. All reports are indicated, and I know Joe's not really worried about this at all, but Travis Etienne, who everybody was thinking would be such a huge part of that offense, not only did not have very much use in the preseason game, but in practice afterwards, he's not getting any reps with the first team. All of the reps are going to James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. And I understand James Robinson. I like James Robinson, but I can't understand why he's not getting more reps than Carlos Hyde in practice. It makes zero sense. Hyde doesn't need reps. Etienne needs the reps. He's a rookie. So it's very confusing to me.
It's just based on how scripted practices are. Some running backs get rest days, some running backs don't get rest days, and some running backs get more carries during practice. It's just how they've scripted the practices so far in Jacksonville. I can totally understand why Carlos Hyde is getting a lot of carries. And Urban Meyer had talked about before that he wasn't planning on playing Travis Etienne that much during the preseason. Travis Etienne has been, on and off, the ice baths throughout the preseason so far. So, I can understand why they're resting him, but I do agree that it is a concern.
So with that being said, this is the end of our regular football podcast. I just want to thank again Joe Flaherty, sports editor at USA Today Affiliates, and Lami over here. I appreciate you guys being here. This has been a blast. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, tune in next Thursday, assuming nobody loses any power, and we will talk about preseason week 2. Thank you guys for being here again.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. And
Go Lions.
Go Lions. Yes, we will see you guys after week 2 of the preseason.